before we go any further, let's tell you what we've got next. Now, Prime Minister Modi has asserted that India is a steadfast partner of Mongolia's development after holding bilateral talks with its visiting president. 10 packs have been exchanged in areas ranging from minerals to yoga. The International Monetary Fund has raised India's growth projection for 2025 to 6.6% from 6.4%, which was its previous estimate in July, the highest among emerging market and developing economies, despite Donald Trump's tariffs. And French Prime Minister Sébastien Lecornu suspends President Emmanuel Macron's flagship pension reform in a bid to get his 2026 budget passed and survive at least two no-confidence motions later this week. Let's now talk about how India and Mongolia are forging ahead in their ties with the ongoing visit of its president. We're joined by our guest, an expert guest, Master Sanjay Bhattacharya, who's former Secretary, the Ministry of External Affairs. Good evening to you, Ambassador Bhattacharya. What do you make of what's happened today in the context of how ties have been taken through the last 70 years? 70 years we've had diplomatic relations with Mongolia. Do you think we've seen things gathering unprecedented pace over the last decade or so?
Well, certainly. This is a very special visit. It's not only the first visit that he's undertaking as President of Mongolia, but it also happens to mark, as you mentioned, the 70th anniversary of the establishment of diplomatic ties, as well as the 10th anniversary of our strategic partnership. And our strategic partnership with Mongolia is rather unique because it has a certain civilizational, cultural context, as well as a very forward-oriented one in terms of our economic cooperation, capacity building, and the other areas that we work upon. So given the kind of sentiment that there is in Mongolia for the people of India, the Buddhist connection that has been always very strong, we have sought to seek that as a foundation towards taking our relations into a more future-oriented partnership that is more relevant in the contemporary world. And I think we've seen great progress in different areas. The kind of MOUs that were signed, 10 of them today, are only an indication. LOCs, cooperation in agriculture, critical materials, in health, in defense cooperation, visa-free, e-visas free to the Mongolians, and so on. So it's really been a very exciting visit. He's going to be here for 4 days, and that's also an indication of the growing ties between our two countries.
What has stood out for you? Because there's an extensive list of outcomes, really. There's, as you mentioned, there's an MOU in cooperation in geology and mineral resources. Mongolia has exploring the kind of rich resources it has. It's still in the exploratory phase, because they are being developed. They do export a lot of that, but there's still a lot of room to grow there. Also, the fact that India will appoint a resident defense attaché now as well very soon there. That's also been agreed during this trip.
Absolutely. I think what we are seeing is that our relations with Mongolia are moving to the next level beyond the cultural contact, which of course is very substantial and very deep, and therefore provides an underpinning, a very broad understanding for doing things that are much more relevant in the contemporary world. Let me mention a few words about the geology and minerals, because that is a very critical element. We have been working with them on a coking coal project. Of course, most of it is exported to other countries because the logistics of a landlocked country are not so easy. But Mongolia has recently also found deposits of zinc, tin, and other critical minerals.
Molybdenum, I believe, as well.
Yes, so they're all very, very relevant from the perspective of the critical material security and the storage facilities that we are looking for. We're already talking with the Russians to see whether there can be more feasible options for exporting them through the Russian ports. We're also seeing at other kinds of development that can happen within the processing within Mongolia. You're aware that we already have an oil refinery project in Mongolia, which is under construction right now, and that will enhance Mongolia's capabilities to a large extent build up its sustainability, and therefore also give it greater potential to exploit and to harvest the other minerals that we have. The defense cooperation that you mentioned is also very significant because we are working on several platforms and initiatives with the Mongolian side. We've had, of course, the contacts through joint exercises for some time now. There are two exercises that we do primarily, one about nomadic steplands, where we do these exercises with the Mongolian side. And there is another one, which is a Mongolian initiative of quick reaction, the Bodkhan initiative. So I think apart from that, we are now looking at the possibilities of providing capacity building to their defense forces, the border defense forces, and to build up and scale up their capabilities in terms of the use of new technologies, drones, and so on. So the appointment of a resident defense attaché in Ulaanbaatar would be a very important step in this particular context, because there is also the opportunities and the future possibilities for the export of equipment that the Mongol side would naturally wish to have in the days to come.
Let's talk about the third neighbor policy that Mongolia has tried to take forward perhaps since the 90s, and India, of course, has Act East as well. To what extent can these two really come together to ensure that India and Mongolia progress together and build upon the ties which have been under par so far?
So this is a very special initiative if you look at it, because Mongolia, as you know, is landlocked and it borders only Russia and China. And when it looks at a third neighbor, it kind of echoes with the kind of sentiment that we also have when we talk of what we call our extended neighborhood. And so an extended neighborhood is a set of countries with whom we share values which may not be geographically contiguous, but because of the kind of common values and aspirations that we have, it actually builds a certain momentum in the kind of relations that we develop. And so I think what we are seeing between India and Mongolia is a similar kind of sentiment being expressed on both sides. As you know, Buddhism had traveled from India into Tibet, and then that Tibetan brand of Buddhism then went and influenced Mongolia. I remember many years ago when a relic of the Lord Buddha himself was carried to Ulaanbaatar for an exhibition for a certain period of time. The entire cabinet of the Mongolian side had kind of come down on their knees on the tarmac of the airport to receive that particular relic. I understand there will be the relics of two other Buddhist saints that will be carried across to commemorate the 70th anniversary of our relations. Also, we'll be looking at more cultural exchanges. The Bodkhan Palace, which is in Ulaanbaatar, if you see it, it's a magnificent structure. It has a lot of old heritage, and a lot of it is connected with India and the kind of Buddhism that came from India, which the Mongols appreciate and value so much. And we are going about with the restoration program for that particular structure. And finally, I think we have upped the number of ITEC and ICCR scholarships,
yes,
and Sanskrit scholars. And I think, I'm not sure if they're also sending Pali scholars, because a lot of the texts were in Pali that were taken across to Mongolia to kind of upgrade their capabilities on that particular front.
Yes, Sanskrit has definitely been mentioned, and the prospect of chartered flight has also been floated, although viability perhaps has to be assessed, and perhaps more youth exchanges would also be very, very fruitful in the coming decades as well. Already 70 years going strong, and stronger still to go. Thanks a lot for joining us, Ambassador, to talk about it.